Let me tell you why you're here.
I've seen things.
Oh my god.
Whoa, yeah! You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Guaranteed to jack you up.
Yo, what is going on, my dudes? It's your host, LamarStaysWeird, coming to you once again with another podcast. Now, today is very special, and I know it's been a minute, but it's because I wanted to take my time to talk about this movie that we're going to be talking about today, because it is very special to me. And even while researching it, rewatching it for I don't know how manyth time I've seen this fucking movie, but it's a movie that's kind of hard to grasp. I want to say I will go ahead and put that out there, because a lot of people know watching this movie, and even the first time I watched it, I was blown away by what I saw, and I completely loved it. I'm not even a big anime fan by any means. I swore off anime like a long time ago, and I was just like, no, like that's not my thing. I'm not into like cartoons like that. Like that's weird. Like, you know, it's all good. And it's only because the only things I ever really knew about anime was just people would talk about like hentai and all that stuff. So a lot of times those people kind of, you know, creeped me out a little bit. You know, it was a little sketch. And I just kind of swore it off, like, oh yeah, you know, I don't want to be one of those people. Like, nah, I'm good. Like, that's not my deal. It's cool you like it, cool. Not for me. Not gonna be my shtick. I was ignorant then. I did not know any better. But on October 11th, everything changed, because I went and saw Akira for the first time in theaters for a re-release. Now, I watched this, and it instantly became one of my favorite movies of all time. As a lot of you may know now, I am really big into the cyberpunk genre, and I love sci-fi, and I love, you know, augmentations, you know, body modifications and stuff like that, and just the future in general. And I firmly believe sci-fi is incredibly important to our society, because it kind of gives us like a window, like a glimpse into what could be and what is possible, all because people have these ideas of how to make things better or more efficient, and that's kind of the route that we're going in. And a lot of that I would say has come true, and we still aim to want to move forward and do these things, just like how we now have like smartwatches. You know, we can actually talk to people, call people, do things on our watches without using phones. Phones in of themselves, same thing, just fucking computers that just chill in your pockets and stuff. And just having earpieces all the time where we can actually talk to each other, we can actually have video calls, and it's weird. It's amazing how we've actually progressed as a society, and a lot of these things were predicted in films, and now we're here, you know. It's the same thing with like virtual reality and augmented reality, which are now becoming more prominent, and is only going to go further and more advanced. It's insane just how much like sci-fi really does influence the world around us and what we can do and what we can be. I love Akira for that sense, because it's very grounded, even though it's cyberpunk. And this movie takes place in 2019. And it's the most realistic one. Blade Runner took place in 2019 as well. Another one of my favorite movies of all time. They both take place at the same time, but they're vastly different. You see flying cars and other androids, and it's not like that in Akira. And in Blade Runner, you have all of that, and it's amazing. It's cool. You know, it really makes you think. You know, we've terraformed other planets. And in Akira, everything is just kind of like fucked, but in a very realistic way, because there's just generational trauma, national trauma that everybody kind of deals with all together. The aftermath of just war, corrupt politicians, crazy, like idealistic, you know, religious like cults, and failed school systems, which is something that's kind of touched on here. Drug addiction amongst the youth becoming a huge thing as well. So there's just honestly so much like to this movie. It's pretty damn realistic, I would say, apart from all the other, you know, sci-fi paranormal aspects of it. But I mean, that depends on how far you want to go into that, because in America we did try to do that thing as well, because we also had the I forgot what the project was called. I think it was like the MK Ultra thing, you know, like putting pregnant people on these drugs and trying to have kids with like telekinetic powers and all that shit. And, you know, like precognition and telepathy, telekinesis, all these different types of things they were trying to do. So it's not that far off. We tried. Did we succeed? I don't know. I didn't research all that stuff, but since it's not that prominent, nah, I don't think we did. And if you guys are watching this on YouTube, you're probably seeing like the lighting kind of like fluctuate. It might get like overexposed for like a little bit and then not so much anymore. That's only because like the sunlight coming in through the window, it's like changing. So I'm just adjusting my blinds as need be. Like right now it's getting darker, but I don't really know what to do with that. Fucking clouds are everywhere. So I'm just going to turn up my lighting, and hopefully this kind of looks distant. It's going to be inconsistent, but I mean, who the fuck cares? Now, I know a lot of people may not know Akira, you know, in the off chance that you don't, but there's a good chance you do. Akira is probably one of the most influential like animated films of all time. It has been referenced in countless sources of media. It's all over the place. It's super ingrained. And a lot of your favorite, you know, actors or even directors or writers, it is probably up there in their list as well. One of my favorite directors, Jordan Peele, this is one of his like favorite movies of all time. And since we're already talking about Jordan Peele, I'm just going to go ahead and put this out there. He was even offered the opportunity to direct a live action Akira because it's been in development hell for God knows how long, probably like 20 years or more. And he just said no. He doesn't want to touch it. And I firmly believe it's because he loves it too much. And you really don't want to be the guy that messes it up. Do I personally think he would be the perfect guy for the job? Without a doubt. We already know he can do horror, and he's a very sophisticated writer. He really knows what he's doing, and just a great director as well. He has an eye for this thing. I think he is the perfect person to bring this project to life. But if he doesn't want to do it, I mean, he doesn't want to do it. It's sad, but I think he would be the guy and it would be amazing. And I think the closest we're ever going to come to a live action Akira, you know, kind of sort of like loosely there, is going to be Chronicle. And that's a movie I've talked about before. I really love Chronicle, and I think it's mainly for that aspect that it's pretty similar to Akira, and it makes it really cool. And it just had a good cast, good writing, good action. Honestly, if you haven't seen that movie, go watch it. Or if you haven't seen the podcast on it, go listen to me talk about it. It's a previous one. I can't remember what episode it was, but I had a blast talking about it, and it is a good movie, definitely worth checking out. But I already know I'm like pre-gushing over this movie, so I haven't even got to properly, you know, put it out there how I normally do. But yes, today we're going to be talking about Akira. Now, this movie was written and directed by Katsushiro Otomo. Brilliant, you know, manga writer, film writer, you know, just director, everything. He's done incredible work, and Akira, I think, is his greatest achievement. And when I say like manga, yeah, this started off as a manga, which I'm sure probably some people already know. It started off as a manga, but this movie was actually created before the manga was even completed. So that's why there's probably some things left out of it. And I can understand when people watch the movie, it's a little confusing. Even watching breakdowns, it's still kind of confusing on what the movie is really about or what's happening. But I actually really, really like that. I like that you're just thrown into it and shit's just happening, and you just have to kind of go along with it because these people are finding things out around the same time that you are. And I kind of like when movies do that. You know, it's kind of okay to start at the beginning and, you know, walk you through everything holding your hand. But I also do like when you're just thrown in the middle of the shit and you just have to adapt and you go with it. I think it makes you connect to the emotions around these people a bit more. Obviously, it depends on how well it's written and how things are going in the story. You have to do it right for it to actually, you know, work and have that effect on people. I think this movie did it very well, but I still understand it can be confusing. And it also doesn't help that this is like a Japanese film, so being subbed or dubbed really is going to affect that. Personally, I like the subbed one. I want to stick to the subbed. That's kind of just one of the only things I really knew when hearing about anime is, oh yeah, subbed over dubbed all day. But I'm not a full anime person, so I'm not going to disrespect anybody who does like dub. I understand. I don't even like subtitles too much because one, they give away some information sometimes because a bunch of text will just show up on the screen and maybe spoil something, or it's just kind of distracting. And I'm not the fastest reader in the world, I'm not gonna lie. So it does take me a second, but it also kind of keeps my eye off of the details of the screen. I don't want to be watching it with my peripheral view. I want to watch it like focusing on these things. You know, that's just my 2 cents. So by all means, sub, dubbed, whatever you like, I do not care. As long as you enjoy it, take away the message, the meaning, whatever, and you get to share that with other people as well, but then also respecting how they personally would want to view it as well. Just enjoy, share, have a great time, and maybe you'll find something great because I never thought Akira would actually mean so much to me. I do have a couple of like holy grails in my opinion, and one of them is definitely going to be this poster. So if you guys are on Spotify listening to this or anywhere else, you're not going to be able to see this, but I have this amazing Akira poster right there that I got when I did work at the theater. I had no intention of actually getting it because I wasn't really sure that was going to be a thing. It was just one of those movies I've always heard you have to watch. And it's like, fine, you know, I'll watch it. Sure. Right after it, I'm like, I have to have that. I need that. And I am so thankful to have that. And I know you can get posters printed and so on and so forth. Trust me, I know. But I wanted the official marketing material. That's what I wanted, and that's what I fucking got, and I am so happy I got that. But it doesn't just end there. I do have more, and I haven't even gotten to the synopsis of the film. Like I said, I'm gonna be everywhere all over this. I'm gonna try not to be. I'm gonna try to keep it contained and get to my normal format. But I just love Akira so much, and I just want to stress to you guys how much I love Akira. And this is probably my biggest pride and joy. You might be able to hear this over the microphone with all the plastic, but I have 32 out of the 38 Marvel comics. I am working hard to try to actually complete this whole collection, and unfortunately, the closer you get to the end of the comic run, it gets more expensive. There are literally issues that will go for a couple $1,000s, and these are special for a number of reasons, because these are vintage or retro, whatever the hell you guys want to call it. The manga ran from 1982 to 1990, and it spans 6 volumes, and that's 120 chapters. Now, I'm not the biggest book reader in the world. I don't read regular books. I'm not gonna lie. That's not me. That's not your boy. You won't really find me in the library too much, okay? But you will find me in a comic shop. I will read comics. I like pictures, man. I like visual. I like colors. Give me something to look at. Okay. The only time this brain is actually functioning, like this melon up here is actually doing anything, is pretty ripe, is only when I'm trying to come up with my own stories and I have all these amazing pictures in my head. That is it. That is the only time. If you give me a whole paragraph to read, I have no idea. It's just full on mashed potatoes going on up here. Nothing. It could just be a skill issue. I'm not gonna lie, but the Marvel Akira comics, Marvel Epic Akira comics, let me be specific because it was Marvel Epic. They ran from August 1988 to February 1996. And I'm almost positive, doing some research, these are the things I saw. The Akira comics were the first digitally colored comics. I'm not exactly sure what that process means, but like I said, it looks amazing and better than most comics I've seen. Like most comics kind of just look the same nowadays, maybe some different styles, but this is on a different level. It's really a work of art. It is gorgeous. And supposedly it is the first manga to be translated from Japanese to English and, sold in the West. So this collection I have is a fucking pioneer, and I'm so excited to have it. And I cannot wait for the day I finish it and read everything, because there's so much left out. Even reading, I think all the way up till issue 25, 26, there's a bunch of stuff in there that is just not in the movie. But I'm not going to keep talking about the comics, but I just wanted to geek out a little bit to show you guys I do love these comics and they mean so much to me. And this movie does as well. But I'm going to finally talk to you about like the synopsis and then go into some other stuff. All right, so this movie came out on July 16th, 1988, originally in Japan. That is the first original release date, but there also was, the release date for the West here in America. It came out December 25th, 1989. So I'm just going to say it's not a coincidence, the birth of Jesus, supposedly, and Akira, debuted the same time. I think that's cool. I think they might have intentionally did that. I think that is really awesome, and that will make sense later when I start, getting into the spoilers. Now, this movie is 2 hours and 4 minutes, so it's a bit of a beefy boy, but not a big problem because something is always happening. Now, the budget for this, I kept seeing like inconsistent numbers. I'm not 100% sure, but the main one I kept seeing over and over is that the budget was 1.1 billion yen. Now, that just translates to $9 million, in US dollars. Which, I mean, not bad, but that was a big deal back then because it was an animated film. It cost like so much, but eventually that was surpassed, I believe, by Spirited Away, which I think probably doubled that budget. And the box office is kind of hard to really tell, but it did pretty well. The numbers I kept seeing was like 49 million, but I think that might also be taking into account just like wide release, like worldwide, and then also like VHS sales and stuff. This movie is a cult following, okay? The only people that really talk about this are diehard fans because this isn't just something I think like a casual person jumps into. I think the people that really keep this alive, and of course, I don't really have to say that, but it is like diehard fans and it's massive and it's still out there. And I try to recommend this to as many people as I can who haven't seen it because it is amazing and it's something that just needs to be talked about. This is art that should just never go away. And I'm saying that as I'm wearing like a band shirt of one of my current favorite bands, Bad Omens, and I do have like their stuff back there. They do have references. Like this is a reference to Akira. Okay? I love that. And their album, The Death of Peace of Mind, is a very nice cyberpunk album that I've talked about before on this podcast. And I think it's so cool that they put out a shirt like this. And whenever they did, I immediately had to cop it. And I'm hoping that gets people to actually look more into it and be like, oh, because the following for Bad Omens is massive and very, very cult-like. Like it gets weird, but I'm hoping that also gets people to look into that once they hear, oh, this shirt is a reference to something. Oh, what is that a reference to? And then they go and figure it out themselves. It's like, yo, just dip your toe in, give it a watch. You may or may not like it. It's amazing. And like I was saying earlier, some of your favorite people, whether it be musicians or directors, writers, comic book writers, colorists, voice actors, anything, there's a good chance Akira is high on their pedestal in stuff that they enjoy and that actually influence their work. It is definitely worth at least acknowledging and looking at. Now, I'm going to read the synopsis straight from IMDb because I kind of like this description, and maybe this will actually catch your eye and, meet your fancy. But here's the synopsis. A secret military project endangers Neo-Tokyo when it turns a biker gang member into a rampaging, psychic psychopath who can only be stopped by a teenager and his gang of biker friends and a group of psychics. Tell me that doesn't sound fucking bonkers, and you're like, what? Like, damn, I gotta fucking look into that. What the fuck happens in Neo-Tokyo? And it is a lot. It is violent, it is bloody, it is breathtakingly beautifully shot, colored, everything. The work process behind this movie is amazing. And I'm pretty sure people have heard it countless amount of times. And I don't want to have to, regurgitate some of the stuff. But for the people that do follow me, the few that are out there, I love and appreciate you guys, by the way. Thank you for the support. Much love and good vibes. Those people probably don't even know these facts, but this was a huge deal. This movie was very different from anything else that was being made at the time, and it was treated with such love and care, and it shows. Because I'm not an animator or anything, I don't fully know what this stuff means, but I am going to read this one fact that is usually like a huge deal, and it's probably cool to people who are artists and in that space who actually pay attention to these things. The movie consists of 2,212 shots and 160,000 single pictures, 2 to 3 times more than usual, using 327 colors, another record in animation film. 50 of which were exclusively created for the film. So there are 50 exclusive colors that were made for the process of this movie. I believe one of them is called Akira Red. And the reason for this statistic is that most of the movie takes place at night, a setting that is traditionally avoided by animators because of the increased color requirements. The visuals alone is worth the watch and the time that you should put into it. But there's a reason this thing is so ingrained in pop culture, in our culture, in the West, and that it's this massive following and is so influential after all these years. Like on IMDb, this movie is sitting at an 8 out of 10, which I think is probably the highest rated movie I've covered so far on this podcast. And on Letterboxd, the average is 4.3, which I think is another highest rating that I've talked about on this podcast. It is definitely worth checking out. And looking at the reviews, like I normally like to talk about on this podcast, there's people writing paragraphs, and I'm not going to go and read all those because that's way too fucking much. But it is nothing but love and admiration for everything that they've seen and all the work put into it and how they felt about the movie. There's so much to it. And I picked like the shortest ones. I picked one that was pretty neutral, kind of funny, because all the good ones were way too long. I like the 5 stars and stuff like that. I gave the movie 5 stars. And I honestly, I can't put it in the words, so I just gave it 5 stars. But I did find one that was like a half a star that was a bad review that I'm going to talk about. So the one that was kind of neutral is pretty funny to me. It says, accidentally got way too stoned before turning this on and didn't have the mental faculties to read the subtitles, so I spent the entire movie just looking at this thing. Have you ever just looked at Akira? Holy shit. And you see, I can't imagine like just being fucking stoned and watching this movie, because like I said, there's some weird shit that happens here and there, and it's probably just a fucking mind fuck, but I'm gonna assume they enjoyed it because they did like the movie. They just didn't give it any like stars, but they did heart the movie. And then this person I kind of understand. So they gave this a half star and said, visually stimulating, but so confusing. Also, I don't know, some scenes kind of traumatic. And yes, but that's kind of the point of the movie. There's a lot of symbolism in this movie because of everything that took place. The bombs have happened. So Hiroshima, Nagasaki, those things have happened. And this movie starts off with a nuclear explosion. And this is coming from Japanese creators. And it gives you like this not so subtle impression of what it was like to deal with that generational and even national trauma. We in the West will probably never come to really understand these things, hopefully, knock on wood. But that was a very fucked up time. And what happened, it really messed up the Japanese culture and completely shifted so many things because of what happened. You get to see, and this is kind of spoilery, like, the transformations that occur with one of our main characters, Tetsuo, and the stuff he goes through. That is very parallel to what it was like for people who were exposed to radiation, and further bloodlines that just got deformed, or even people that were there who were deformed because of the atom bombs. So I kind of like that this movie is seen as kind of traumatic, because that is the point. That was very fucking traumatic. That happened to them, and they found a way to express that. There's so many different ways people have expressed this. We wouldn't have Godzilla because of that. And now we also wouldn't have Akira and their interpretation of what it's like to try to rebuild while having that PTSD of just your country and just your people as a whole being so affected by something. And a lot of people affected that had nothing to do with anything that was going on. They were just there, the wrong place at the wrong time. And I believe that's why they wanted to make it so visually stimulating, as this person states, because they want you to look at it. They want it to look good, to bring you in, but also look good enough and depict these horrific images in such a way so that way you see it, so that way you can actually consume it in a more digestible way. And that's exactly what they did. And I'm not going to spend too much time getting into all the political stuff, because I am not the smartest person in the world. So I am not super qualified to talk about all those things. And this movie is layers deep, and I can only touch on some things a little bit. And this person is right that this movie can be confusing because it's a little all over the place, and like I said, it does drop you in the middle and you're going with the story the same pace as these characters. Like, it took me multiple watches, and this is one of those movies where right after I watched it, I had to go watch breakdowns to be like, what the fuck did I just see? And a lot of people don't like that, sure, but it was different for me because I wanted to know more. I desperately wanted to understand what this movie was about. And it's amazing seeing people break it down and actually, kind of spoon feed me this information. And I know it's only going to get deeper with these comics, and I can't wait to finally finish my collection and actually get to the bottom of it and see everything that Otomo really had to say. Now, I feel like at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and get into the spoilery sections of this, but there's just so much to talk about. I don't even really know, but I could try to give you guys like a rough outline of everything happening. So we get introduced to this movie. We're starting to see, the world itself, once again, looks amazing, but we are following this biker gang that is in Neo Tokyo. So this is Neo Tokyo after it's been rebuilt, after it was destroyed. In the very beginning of this film, we actually see this huge explosion and it's just gone. Tokyo is just wiped off the map. And that's one of the taglines of the movie is Neo Tokyo is about to explode. And, big letters and, just spaced out because they want you to get the point. And I feel like that should already grab you in right then and there because everybody knows about the bombings. And, even with recent films like Oppenheimer and stuff, it's kind of back into the conversation again. And it really makes you think. And that is kind of the tagline for a Japanese film. You're probably wondering, oh shit, like you already know it's going to be deep. This is going to be like very personal. And rightfully so. So after that is shown in the very beginning of the film, we're introduced to this biker gang. The main people that we're following is Kaneda and Tetsuo. So Kaneda's the leader and Tetsuo is kind of the younger person of the crowd. They're both about, like, I believe one of them is like 16, 15. So I think Kaneda's 16, Tetsuo is 15. So these are children, and you kind of forget that while watching this. You're probably thinking like, oh yeah, they're like young adults, because I feel like that's what our mind automatically adjusts to, or it could just be me. I am in my mid 20s, so I kind of autocorrect them in my head to young adults, but they're kids going through this shit. They have drug addictions. I mean, the gang themselves is called the Capsules. They have this badass red jacket with a pill on the back, and it's cool. And they have this beef with this gang called the Clowns. The Clowns are spotted in their turf causing trouble, so they go out and looking for them and start just not killing them. You would think they're dying, but they're just beating up all these different gang members and just putting them in the hospital. And they start chasing this one that started to get away. And now they started to drive off into the outskirts where old Tokyo used to be. And a lot of that's still under construction. And that's when there's this accident of Tetsuo, who's trying to be, he's trying to like puff up his chest a bit because he is the younger one, the smaller one. He's kind of seen off as just like the kid. He's not really taken seriously. He's always the one that needs saving. He's the baby bird. He's the baby bird under the wing. Nothing wrong with that. But as being somebody who's been small my whole life, because I am, like, skinny and I'm still the tallest 5'6" person you've ever seen. Granted, I wasn't always that way. I was smaller, I was lighter. So it's one of those things where it's like, hey, I'm not like a fucking joke. I'm still a person. Take me serious a bit. And that's just one of those things. And it falls into that, I believe, like male primal type of deal. I don't have that sort of problem, but back then, I do understand that. And I can relate with Tetsuo a bit because he wants to be taken serious, that he can hold his own, that he is independent, that he is a man. And he's going above and beyond, chasing this guy and trying to just show up like his leader and everyone else because he wants that recognition, that respect. But in doing so, chasing that, he runs into this kid who is a telepath. He has telekinesis, and he's able to block himself from getting struck by this bike. And that's the catalyst of everything going wrong. So because Tetsuo was actually able to interact with this kid who has these telekinetic powers. And after this interaction, this is when the military comes up and all this, and they start to see like, oh yeah, there's some like changes in this kid. Like we kind of like we got to take him. So they take him. They run all these tests on him. And a lot of you have seen this test scene 100%, or you've even seen a lot of key scenes from Akira because, you know, hate him, love him, whatever you guys want to see him. I don't really know. I think that's a whole separate bag of worms. But Kanye West, in his song with Daft Punk, you know, Stronger, he replicated a lot of scenes from Akira. And that kind of blew my mind because when I was younger, I had no idea what the hell that was. But then being older and kind of being reminded of that, I went and watched it. And I'm like, holy shit. There's actually, they did a really good job. I'm not gonna lie. I'll give Kanye credit to where credit's due on that sense. That is fucking cool. I did not know he was a huge Akira fan. Am I a fan of him? No, I'm not my guy. But still fucking cool, and just shows you how influential it is. I'm pretty sure a lot of people wouldn't have thought like, oh yeah, Akira is gonna influence Kanye, but it's kind of no secret that anime and just the black community, they go hand in hand. It's this strange relationship that is, I think not a lot of people would have really expected or anything like way back when, but they're kind of deep rooted, and that's kind of really awesome. So I really have to give it there as somebody who's new getting into anime, you know, trying to discover these certain things and cool stories and, you know, new ways of storytelling for me because I didn't grow up being into anime like that. I am thrilled and I'm super grateful for the black community kind of keeping anime on this pretty damn high pedestal, you know, afloat in the West. Japanese creators. I wonder how they feel about that. I'm actually very curious. And just like the population as a whole, because I like there's probably plenty of major fans here who could give like big fans there where their content originated a run for their money on like who's like a bigger fan. That's probably really fucking sick. Because honestly, I don't think I've met a single person from the black community who isn't an anime fan. And then it's also kind of funny that, you know, Japan also has like this infatuation with like hip hop and like the kind of like the attire. It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool when shit like that fucking like, you know, twiddles fingers a little bit, you know, kind of touch tips. That's really cool. But like I was saying, so that's the catalyst for everything going wrong. Tetsuo starts to undergo these changes and he starts to develop these powers. And now the military is in fear of what his powers could be because they've already seen Akira, who is this kid who had this divine power and couldn't really control it and ended up destroying Tokyo. Now they're starting to see the same strength of power with Tetsuo, and the problem is he's older, so he is more in his ways of, you know, being human. You know, he has human faults versus the purity of a child. The child didn't know any better, couldn't control it, and that's what they did. This person is stuck in their ways where they want to harm people. They have an ego, they have trauma, they have drug addiction. So it's all these different things that factor in. And even these other kids, because there's 3 psychic kids that we read, you know, in the synopsis, and they even specify that somebody like Tetsuo, big people, how they described it, shouldn't have this power. And that's because they already know you're set in your ways, your brain is developed, and now you have all these different things. You're impure, you have different ways of thinking, you're not selfless. And so it becomes a whole thing. And even Canada and Tetsuo start to have problems because Tetsuo, I mean, he's missing around for a lot of the point. But once he does start to have this power, he actually starts to just wield it like crazy because he now starts to see himself as like this god. And then once he starts hearing about Akira, it's like, oh, I want to go find him because there is somebody else who was either stronger than him or that he's equal to their strength and they're this huge thing. And Akira has this cult following as like this messiah. And a lot of people start to mistake Tetsuo for this second coming. And so like the secrets get out, there's leaks, there's people with different agendas. There's so many different things. There's so many little plot lines that all connect very well. Just in the movie, probably not the greatest well done because, you know, in the comics, everything's way more fleshed out. But you do get a sense of that. You see everybody has like these alternative motives, trying to move up politically or just whatever. There's always something. There's this group of resistance fighters that want to stop all this from happening, and Canada kind of gets mixed up with them, all because he's chasing a girl like the whole time that he wants to get with. So that whole thing's going on. Yeah, all these different factions trying to all either stop Akira or free Akira or just stop whatever's going on or help the kids and get away from that situation. There's so much going on. And by the end of the film, it comes down to Canada trying to kill his best friend, wanting to stop him for what he's becoming. The ending battle is so good. There's so much that happens. That's where you start to see a lot of the body horror. And you even start to see that Tetsuo is losing control of his powers and even becomes afraid of them because he's growing in strength. And just like how him running into Takashi, which is one of the kids that, the whole catalyst really sprung from that activated his powers, him coming around Akira, who is being trapped down below underneath this Olympic stadium cryogenically, him coming in contact with Akira, like in his space, his power, it kind of reanimated him. So after what Akira did in the beginning, he was dissected and just turned into these different things, like, brain stem, spinal, all these different things. He's just parts. He's just body parts. But he is able to like reanimate himself kind of like in this phantasm, phantom like form kind of. And this is when Tetsuo is losing control and is starting to grow, and he just turns into this, like his power breaks out of his body because he does lose his arm. And that's where one of the cool shots, he has a, metal arm that he made out of these wires and, using his power. But now his body is no longer like a cage containing his powers. It's open. There's a wound. And so it starts to come out of that. And that's when he starts to shift into like this big blob and kind of takes on the form of a baby, of an infant, which is ironic because his powers are brand new and it's kind of foreshadowing what's about to happen. He can't control this because at the end of the day, he is just a child and he's starting to grow in power to the point of omnipotence, which is, very godlike, divine power. And I believe it's stated he's pretty much like the inverse of what Akira was. If I remember correctly, I hope I'm not getting this wrong because this movie can be pretty easy to get lost and like, misunderstand something. But he was able to turn into this light. So doing the same thing all over again, this huge bubble of light, thinking that, oh, they're going to explode Neo Tokyo again. But what he was actually doing was trying to capture and cage Tetsuo, who was pretty much turning into this universe. Like his power was going so great, and the only person that can understand that power is Akira. He's pure, he understands his power. And so with Tetsuo morphing and changing into this, he was actually able to stop him. And it does, unfortunately destroy a lot of Neo Tokyo again. But I mean, that kind of makes sense because of what did happen. There were 2 bombings back then, and now we had the same thing all over again. You get to see these 2 cataclysmic, unfortunate events that just happen. And he couldn't control what he was doing at that point. That was simply his power. So it was only up to Akira to kind of just teleport him to this other universe and begin. And that's where he becomes his own universe, which is like this divine power, this ultimate knowledge. Like once that was unlocked and peaked, it's kind of like the Big Bang all over again. It's this massive beginning, and that's what happens. And the last line of the movie is "I am Tetsuo," which is very much, it's just the I am. The I am is what matters. So he's no longer this egotistical, power hungry person. Now he became like this omnipotent force of just like, all knowing, and became a universe. And Akira helped him, because that's all he could do. Nobody was there to really help Akira. Akira just unfortunately did that. But in that process, and ever since that happened, he was able to understand himself and his powers. And now he's able to assist Tetsuo. And there we go. The whole movie just leads up to the birth of a universe, the destruction of a major city, a major developed city that came back from the ashes and instead birthed a universe. It is fucking wild. There's so much to it. I know I'm probably bad at explaining it, but it is amazing. It is beautiful all the way around. And like I said, it's one of my favorite movies that I still don't fully understand. And every time I watch it, I forget something and I'm like, oh shit, that's fucking cool. Like, I geek out over this film. And I kind of can't wait for the day that we actually have a live action because I do love this movie so much and I would love to see more done with the property. That's why I'm so excited to finally finish these, like this comic collection, because then I can finally know the whole story and I cannot wait. So that's just more content I don't know about. But a live action would be cool. I know it's usually very bad juju, but I kind of have faith in the adaptation because the rights are actually owned by, very fucking shockingly, Leonardo DiCaprio, which is not what I would have expected, but I believe he is a big fan and wants to protect the work, and that's why he bought it. So he owns the rights to this movie, and that's the reason it hasn't really been made. Granted, they've tried. They definitely tried. There's been so many writers and directors attached to this. The last thing I heard was Taika Waititi, being aimed as like, the director for the project. And I don't know how to feel about it. I'm not sure, but it's still not happening. At least as far as we know, there's no cast or anything. I don't know what they're gonna do. I'm definitely worried, but I want it to be good. And I'm kind of glad it's not just owned by a studio, it's owned by a person because they are a fan. And I'm hoping that can lead to this amazing adaptation. And this movie was set to be adapted like in the 1990s, but they feared that it would cost way too much. I think the budget would have been around $300 million. Granted, that was for back then. Now $300 million movies aren't a big deal and we already see what they look like and a lot of them can be good. So I think it's very possible in the means, but, and there's a big but here, and it all depends on how you use your money. And we already know some studios are just not great with that. They will throw so much money at a project and it doesn't even look like it was even worth that. So that was $300 million for the 1990s. Now I did the math. I did like, the whole calculation thing. So $300 million back then, now that would be over $500 million. It would be like 560 something million. That's wild for a single movie. That is wild. A movie hasn't really come close to costing that much. Not that number. But we've done $300 million movies before. But as far as I see from the research I've done, the only movie that can come close to that would be Star Wars The Force Awakens. That was about $447 million to make. And the movie looks great. I think it's a good movie, regardless of how I feel about the sequel trilogy. I think that is a good movie. I did really enjoy it. I think the money was probably well worth it. I don't think anybody can say that movie looks bad by any means. So I think it's very possible, and Akira wasn't that developed. Like I said earlier, it's not like Blade Runner where they had all these flying cars and all this and that, androids and stuff. They didn't have any of that. It was kind of very boots to ground. It's just kind of the world building. You really got to put the work in. The world building, the effects, and just the writing itself. Those are going to be like the big things. And cinematography. Like, you got to have this movie look gorgeous. You got to do it right. And I feel like that is not a lot to ask for. But we have had $300 million movies now, even though I know the fluctuation would be different. But even then, I think with $300 million nowadays, it's still possible. You got like a lot of the Avengers movies, Endgame, Age of Ultron, Infinity War, all those costs, I believe, north of $300 million. We already know how they turned out. Avatar, The Way of Water, another movie that's over $300 million. Pirates of the Caribbean, At World's End. There's just so many movies that look great that spent that much money. And I think it's very possible to make Akira. It just, somebody has to love this project and do it right. Give it the proper TLC and we will have an amazing film. And it will be hard because it has major shoes to fill, but I have a feeling it is possible with the right people behind it. And I'm so glad somebody like Leonardo DiCaprio, who's a very acclaimed actor, everybody knows, and he's been a part of nothing but incredible movies. So this guy obviously knows quality. He has the right connections as well. I think he could get amazing writers, directors, everything. Who would not throw money at a project that Leonardo DiCaprio is 100% behind. That would be dumb to pass up that opportunity. But I believe it's very doable, and especially how much the world kind of likes sci-fi now. I think the world has always been infatuated with sci-fi, but especially now, I think we're great because one of the biggest shows ever, Stranger Things, I would say is pretty on par because of the whole paranormal aspect and, just the telekinesis, with the kids having to deal with like these powers and adult situations. It's not that far-fetched. You can do it again. This would fit into the market of what people enjoy. Not to mention, it would already have so many people very much invested and willing to go see this project. You got the Akira fans, them alone. And then you have everybody who's into anime who wants to support good anime adaptations, because if we do that, we will get better. They will get better people to actually adapt more projects, and they will actually be successful. Nobody wants less of like an intellectual property. They just want it done right and want more, not too much to where like you're obviously milking it, but we want to see that somebody actually gives a shit and wants this to be good. Then you get all the sci-fi fans who are very much going to be into it because it's going to be a new sci-fi epic. I think this is like something that could be turned into a trilogy. I don't think it's a one-off movie. Just like this movie, I think it's good on its own, but I think they can do better by fleshing it out more. And if they want to keep making money, which is going into like the milking thing a little bit, but not exactly, because there is so much story to this like universe, they could, expand it to at least like a 2-part. And then you have like all the fans that are like of projects that were definitely influenced by Akira, because they would know Akira as well. So that's probably going to lean into like the fan aspect, but they're going to be into that. People who are like into the Matrix, into Blade Runner, into Looper, Chronicle, other movies I've talked about on this podcast before. There's so much, and it's been referenced in cartoons countless times. The Akira slide is all over the place, and I think the last time the Akira slide was actually done very well, and I think really got people's attention, was Jordan Peele. His movie Nope, another movie I covered on the podcast. Keke Palmer did the Akira slide, and I can't imagine how amazing that must have felt. One, for Jordan Peele to shoot it, and then two, for Keke Palmer to be a part of that. I have a feeling she probably really enjoyed that, and it made her character look so badass. And she was already a fun character. That was just like a cherry on top. It didn't need to be there, but it was great. I fucking enjoyed it, and everybody else liked it because a lot of people were talking about it right after and got Akira back into the mainstream and being talked about with younger crowds, because that movie was amazing. And I know I didn't dive like super deep into the story or anything because, like I said, there's so much, and I don't want to like try to get confused like with what's in the comics to what's in there, because I have read some of these comics. There are definitely different things, but I just know it is a movie worth watching. I think everybody would enjoy. I would love to watch this movie with more people. It's fucking sick. And there are just great things that come from it. Like how inspirational this film is really remarkable, and it definitely inspires me in a lot of the work that I want to do and a lot of the stories I want to tell. A lot of them are like sci-fi, cyberpunk stories, and Akira is a big inspiration for those. And I can't wait to actually one day show off my projects. But before I go, I do want to talk about this one story while researching that I found that I thought was amazing. So there's this story about this person who actually built a replica bike that cost over $100,000. I think it was around $120,000. I hope I don't butcher his name, but his name is Masashi Toshima. Now, I really hope I'm not messing that up. And I know I didn't talk about the cast or anything like that. Honestly, I really don't want to butcher anybody's names, but every person who worked on this, every writer, every director, every, colorist, person that draws, animates, everyone deserves the utmost respect. And I think you are a fucking legend and a goat if you worked on this movie. I know like the animators and like drawers, people like that, there was a team of like 70 people just working around the clock, like, middle of the night, trying to get this movie done. And it did not go without, warrant. This movie is amazing, and it means so much to so many people, and I hope maybe there's still some of them out there who still watch like all new content that may come out about Akira because they're that proud of the work that they did. They actually get to see there's so much love still going on to this day and even into the future. But back to the story. So he replicated the bike, Canada's bike, which is like the famous bike from Akira that everybody fucking knows. And whenever he finished it, he actually asked for Otomo's blessing to ride the bike that he made, but it, out of respect because it was somebody else's creation, he asked him to ride it with his blessing across Japan. And he did. He allowed him to. But that's not where it's like that badass. Where it's really badass is he did it for charity. He rode across Japan and just raised money for kids with autism. That is fucking sick. That is awesome. And I hope we get to see more people doing cool shit like that because it's great. Like, I can't imagine how he feels working on such a personal project that is representative of your culture and just your country and the trauma you guys have been through. It's amazing. And to see that it's taken in and loved and cherished so much and is even influencing decades later and probably still like for the foreseeable future. It's amazing. Like I can't imagine, and I can only hope to have a fraction of that feeling or that success with anything that I put out. And I hope that also inspires people to actually do anything you want to do. Like, I do these things because I just want to do it. I never thought I would have a fucking podcast, but I do because I really like it. I never thought I'd be writing comic books. Granted, haven't created anything or finished a story, but I'm trying to do something. I'm trying to get further. I'm even trying to get a partner to where they can keep me in check and we can actually write something and maybe one day get something done. It would be amazing just to hold a physical copy of something I've done, and I want to get there. And I really hope you guys do the same thing. So please keep going, strive for exactly what you want, regardless of the setbacks you may have, whether it be depression or just, stress or anything. Don't let anything get in the way. Do what you want to do. I know sometimes I let it get in the way of my stuff and it takes me a minute to put out a project. Like I can help that. I can help what I'm doing, but sometimes I need a moment to like pick myself up, and that's what I do. But I try to come back and do something cool or just do something I like, and this is one of those things, and I'm very proud. This is honestly, doing these is very motivational for me because I see I am doing something. I don't even pay attention to the numbers that much. I'll look at them every now and then, but as long as people enjoy them and I get some nice comments here and there every now and then, it fucking means the world to me. It does. It means so much. So I really appreciate Otomo's work and everything he's done. I hope one day we do get to see this amazing live adaptation. Yeah. I hope I kind of convinced you to go watch this movie. And I didn't really go too deep into it because I don't want to spoil it, completely. It's just a journey you have to watch. I really hope you watch it in subbed, you pay respect to like the original voice actors, because the dubbed, I honestly couldn't really get into it. So by all means, watch it. Let me know what you think. I would love to know. Before we actually get out of here, I got to give you guys your cookies fortune, man. I kind of want to go with something a little inspirational. So here we go. Without deviation from the norm, progress is not possible. Do with that what you will, ladies and gentlemen. But until next time, be excellent, be kind, subscribe to the podcast.